let's go ahead and get started. I just want to thank everyone again for joining today's webinar, all about the Generac PWRcell 2, Smarter, Stronger Home Energy Storage. I want to encourage everyone to feel free to enter any questions into our Q&A. I can see that should be down at the bottom of your screen. So we'll have some time at the end here to address those questions as they come in. All right, let's get started. So before we go any further, I know many of you are already familiar with who we are here at Cape Fear Solar Systems, but of course want to make an introduction to anyone who's new to these webinars. Cape Fear Solar has been in business now since 2007. We're located here in downtown Wilmington, but serve about a 2.5 to 3 hour radius of Wilmington. And we've done over 4,500 installations over that now 18 years of business. We have 60 employees here, all operating out of this facility. And of course, we're BBB accredited and hold all of the highest industry accreditations. And lastly, we like to highlight how we're community focused, and that just goes back to the way that we manage relationships with the utilities, with the cities and counties that ultimately provide the permits and inspections for which these systems have to adhere to. And ultimately, we just want to make sure that you understand that we're the experts to be able to guide you through any questions you have as it pertains to residential, commercial solar installations, EV charging, and battery solutions. And so for today's webinar, of course, we'll be diving deeper into the Generac PWRcell 2 product, but first I want to pass it over to Henry Colton from the Generac team to give a brief introduction.
Great, thanks, Gabe. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on today. I'm Henry Colton. I run sales for Generac Clean Energy in the East, and I'm based in Asheville, North Carolina, although I did grow up in Wilmington. So, in addition to Cape Fear just, being the gold standard when it comes to dealers that I work with, I do enjoy any excuse to get to their office and, get back to some of the restaurants I've been missing, namely PTs, I think would be at the top of that list. So, anyway, I appreciate you having me on again. Wanted to get into a little bit about who Generac is and where we're coming from. So Generac's a US-based company, been in business since 1959, so over 65 years. We're based in Waukesha, Wisconsin, right outside of Milwaukee. We are, a lot of you may know us for generators. I mean, we're the market leader in the home standby generator space. We have over 3 million generators online in North America. And some of you may not know that we did purchase ecobee a few years back. So at the end of 2021, we purchased ecobee, and there are over 5 million ecobee users in North America. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about what we're going to be doing with ecobee in relation to our PWRcell 2 system. But I think like all this goes to show, we have a huge dealer base. A lot of dealers are able to, build their marketing around our name. Cape Fear, it's maybe a little bit less important to you guys because you've done such a great job with your brand in Eastern North Carolina, but a lot of smaller dealers are able to really lean on Generac because of the track record that we've set, because we, are that strong US brand that has 24/7 customer support and has been rolling out these home backup solutions for homeowners for decades and really being a leader in that space. I think from a homeowner's perspective, when you're looking at the manufacturer of the equipment that you're going to be putting on your home, either in a solar capacity to save money or a battery capacity to back up that solar investment, I think it's important to look at the technology, but also who's the company, right? You're going to be getting a warranty from the manufacturer of your equipment. How stable is that company? How stable is that company going to be in the future? And I think that's something that really stands out when you look at Generac, when you look at our diverse product portfolio. We're not just in solar and batteries. This is a new somewhat new endeavor for us. We've been doing it for over 5 years now. But if you look, as things shift with policy and solar, Generac is going to be less affected than, some of our competitors out there. And I think for you, the homeowner, that should just give you some additional peace of mind in putting a Generac product on your home. And we are that recognized brand. We're, a Fortune 500 company. We're publicly traded. But yeah, I'm excited to get into the product a little bit more with you here in a minute. But in the meantime, I'll pass it back to Gabe to get into a little bit of energy storage 101 and why energy storage now.
Awesome. Thanks, Henry. Appreciate that. And I really appreciate just, of course, highlighting Generac's background and their longevity in the backup space. I think that's huge. Now, cool. For anyone who is new to energy storage, I understand we've got folks who are on the webinar today that have solar maybe already from us. Some folks maybe don't. And so I think it's always helpful to take a step back and just make sure we understand how energy storage would actually work with solar. If you have solar on your home, then you're able to produce that energy when the sun's out. Your home's able to use it directly. Any excess that you produce is able to get pushed back to the grid where you're going to be able to receive some form of credit depending on the way that your utility works. What you're not going to be able to do is be able to utilize any energy that you could be producing in the event of an outage. You're not going to be able to control when you're using the electricity you're producing. You're just going to be subject to when that electricity is produced by the solar. Are you able to use it at that time? If not, it gets pushed back, maybe for you to use later, and you're subjected to that crediting system that the utility has. And without a place to store it on site, you're also not able to effectively close off the utility so that when the grid does go down, you're able to actually store and then utilize that storage for backup purposes. And so what that battery does is it's going to first take the excess energy that you store during the day and have it available to use, whether it's at night on cloudy days when it may not be producing, or you're going to be able to utilize it to perhaps even shift load from one time to another. And so we'll get into that a little bit more here in a moment. And so again, to speak to that a little bit more intentionally, some of the frequent reasons that folks reach out to us and choose to add energy storage, whether it be part of a new solar installation or as part of an addition to an existing solar installation, what they're typically looking for is either energy independence, where they can store and utilize the energy however they might choose to, so that they can use it, and be self reliant during the day, so they're not pulling from the grid at times where usage would be higher. They're looking for that independence in the form of backup power to be able to power their home in the event of an outage without potentially needing a generator. And we'll talk a little bit more later about how these systems can actually be potentially integrated with some generator options. But I think it's helpful to understand that in certain scenarios, depending on your goals, it might also mean that you don't need to install a generator. And it also has the potential to provide some form of financial savings. When this is a little bit of jargon here, and when we see the words rate arbitrage, but what that really just means is that if you're on a time of use rate plan, then having a battery would allow you to store energy from your solar into the battery when electricity is cheaper from the grid, and then use the energy from that battery later when it would otherwise be more expensive to pull from the grid. And so you're able to essentially shift your usage from the grid to the time of day in which it is least expensive for you and maximize your savings. And it really just provides that grid flexibility. While that might not be the current scenario for you, maybe you're on a traditional billing structure where the time of day in which you use electricity doesn't so much matter. Many utilities more and more utilities are pivoting towards time of use rate plans. And we really hear about a new one almost feels like every week now across the country, across our region, that is pivoting towards a time of use rate plan, not just for solar customers, but for all customers. And I think that's something that's important to understand, is that having a battery as a part of your system just puts you in a greater place of control to be able to use that energy however you might choose to in the event it becomes valuable for you to do so. And then lastly, sunsetting incentives. Something that is really big in the news right now is the potential for certain solar incentives to go away here in the not too distant future. And so if that does come to pass, then of course we just want to make sure that folks who are interested and curious about adding these solutions to their home have the opportunity to do so and capitalize on what's currently available. All right. And so on that note, we'll pass it back to Henry to dive a little bit deeper into the product specifications.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Gabe. So yeah, so we're going to be talking about the Generac PWRcell 2 today, which is our new energy storage platform that's launching. But we're also going to be talking about how it ties into our whole Generac product ecosystem. You'll see a picture of the ecobee here, so we'll get into that in just a minute. But I really wanted to start with the customer backup experience with the new Generac PWRcell 2 system. So I think this is what, in my mind, this is the value proposition that really sets us apart from some of the competition. What you're about to see here, what it looks like to experience a power outage when you have a PWRcell 2 system. So, first of all, you're going to experience a bumpless transition. So the battery's going to switch. You're going to switch over to the battery in less than a second. A lot of times your clocks on the stove aren't even going to reset. The lights are barely going to flicker. We actually push a notification both to our mobile app and to the ecobee smart thermostat to let you know that you are in an outage, because a lot of times homeowners won't even realize that the power's gone out because the transition is that quick. So to talk a little bit more about this ecobee integration, there are a couple of really cool things happening here. So not only are you going to be able to monitor your system at all times through the ecobee, you won't just be relying on your phone app. Our phone app is really sleek. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But for anyone in your home to be able to monitor the solar, the battery, how much energy your house is consuming, how much you're using from the grid or sending back to the grid, is definitely a big value add with this ecobee integration. The other really cool functionality is that we're actually going to be able to increase the temperature on the thermostat when you go into an outage. So on the next slide, you'll see that what that does essentially is you're going to go into the outage and say you're normally set at 72. We can, by choosing a setting on the ecobee, you can have the ecobee automatically increase your thermostat to say 78. So when the power goes out, it's going to automatically turn off your AC unit and then put the power back in your hands to decide how much you want to use that AC in the outage based on some different factors. Is it during the day? Is your solar producing? That's a great time to run your AC. When your solar's producing, you're not draining your battery at all. Once you go into the evening hours, your backup ability is going to be, it will be determined by the size of your battery. So if you have, one other good thing about our system is we are a higher capacity battery. So you're going to get 18 kilowatt hours with the PWRcell 2. But this ecobee integration really will be able to extend how long you're able to go through an outage and really put the control back in your hands. As you can see here, you can immediately go over to the ecobee and you can turn the thermostat back down to 72. But it'll reflect in real time what that does to your hours of backup remaining. One of the images did drop out here, but it was showing before the homeowner changed the thermostat, it'll show 16 plus hours of backup. Once you turn on the AC unit, it drops to 4.5. Yeah, Gabe, that's not on your end. It's just something that was like a build that was in there. But anyway, so yeah, it would show 16, then it drops down to 4.5. At this point, the sun is down. But the most important thing is it's giving you information here to help make a choice. Do you want to run the AC for 2 hours, cool the house down, and then switch to fans? Do you want to call DAR and get him to add a second battery cabinet prior to going into your next outage? Like, it or do you want to look at adding a generator? So it gives you a lot of information that helps you make an informed choice instead of just not knowing maybe why your battery drained too quickly, like could happen with one of our competitors. All right, so on this slide, we're talking about one of the benefits of our system being AC coupled. And so the really quick and an AC coupled system, a couple different things. So it doesn't necessarily need to be paired with a solar inverter that's from the same manufacturer, because we are going to convert the DC energy from the solar into AC, and then we're going to go back into DC in the battery. So that's an AC coupled system. Where a DC coupled system, usually the inverter manufacturer is the same as the battery, and we're sending the DC from the solar straight into the battery. But there are a couple advantages to AC coupling. One of them that we're showing here being that you're able to, in an outage, and admittedly, I am going to get a little bit in the weeds here, but you're able to add the continuous output of the solar to the continuous output of the battery. So you can see here, this is kind of an extreme example, but this homeowner is actually using 20 kilowatts of energy, which means they're probably charging an electric vehicle, running 2 AC units. They've got the pool pump on. So this is something that is possible with PWRcell 2. With a lot of our DC coupled competitors, you would be limited to 11.5 kW here. So the takeaway is you would be able to run essentially half as many things while your solar is producing in this outage. By being able to add that capacity of the solar to the continuous output of the battery, really just gives you more freedom while your solar is producing to maybe turn on that second AC unit, or maybe charge the electric vehicle for a few hours to get that battery charged up where you can run some errands. So it's really just adding some flexibility for you here. And then on this last slide, we're showing where the generator integration ties in. So one of the great things about PWRcell 2, generator integration is really easy with this system. When we look at the system configuration in a minute, we'll look at that a little bit more. But this is going to be compatible with just about any Guardian series home standby generator. So any 14 to 26 kW Generac generator would be compatible with this system. And what the generator is most often going to do is, when your battery state of charge gets down to a low point, 20%, the battery is going to go into a standby mode. The generator is going to turn on. It's going to power the loads in the home and recharge the battery. Usually this will take place over 2 or 3 hours, and then the generator will turn back off. The generator is also available to power additional loads in the home if the battery didn't have enough power to power those loads. And, real quick, if anyone out there already has a generator and you're wondering, well, why would I need to add a battery if I already have a generator? Well, I think there are a lot of advantages to this hybrid system. Generators make noise. Generators use gas, whether it's natural gas or propane. If you have a generator today, you could add this solar and battery system, save money on your electric bill, possibly get rebates from your utility, and then you would only have to run your generator for 3 hours a day in the middle of an outage. And so you're going to save on fuel. You're not going to be hearing the generator run the whole time, but it's also going to give you the benefit of essentially a bottomless battery. All right, so real quick, I know we were mostly talking about backup there, but I did want to piggyback on Gabe's conversation around time of use rates that are getting rolled out more and more across the Southeast. You'll see these with Duke. You'll see these with a lot of your local co-ops as well. So when you're looking at the Generac battery, and we'll get into the sizing a little bit in a second, but I do recommend the 18 kilowatt hour as our flagship model. So this is going to be larger in capacity than the single battery alternatives. Some of our competitors are offering a 13.5 or a 15 kilowatt hour battery. So by going with 18, when you're trying to save money with your utility, what this enables you to do is offset your consumption for 33% longer, or offset, a third more consumption during the peak hours. So this graph to the right, I'll admit, is maybe a little bit much when you look at it for the first time. But what you're seeing here is if there was any energy that was pulled from the utility, that would be reflected in purple. So what you're seeing here is a homeowner that's 100% self-sufficient during this day in March from their solar and their battery. So from midnight to 8 a.m., they're draining their battery that was filled up the day before. The solid green line represents the state of charge on the battery. So you can see from midnight to 8 a.m., the battery goes from 50% full down to about 20. Solar comes on at 8 o'clock. It's going to power all the loads in the home from 8 to 5 while it recharges the battery up to 100%. And then you're going to discharge the battery again in the evening hours. So this homeowner is essentially a perfect self-consumption model of being able to leverage the capacity in your battery so you're not pulling those expensive peak hour kilowatt hours from the grid. All right. So now that we've gone through the functionality, wanted to get into the system components, just so you can get a little bit more exposure to this system. So, in this whole ecosystem of products that we have, the PWRcell 2 is the energy storage platform. So let's go to the next slide, Gabe, and we can see what these different system components are. So this is it here. I will go ahead and say, because I sometimes get this question, the basketball does not come with the system, but everything that's Generac labeled or Ecobee labeled is part of the system. So starting on the far right, we have our battery cabinet. Our battery cabinet is somewhat unique. It's modular in design. So there are 3 kilowatt hour battery modules that we use with this system. So you can start at as small as a 9 kilowatt hour solution and go up to an 18. Like I said earlier, I really encourage most folks to go with the 18. That's going to give you the ability to power those larger loads, to back up AC, to back up a well pump. Some of those things that most homeowners that I talk to don't really want to give up in the outage. And so, we do have the benefit of having this high capacity battery that pushes, over 10 kW in an outage. And then moving left, we have our 11.5 kW battery inverter. So once again, tying into being an AC coupled system, we need to leverage this battery inverter to convert the AC coming into our hub into the DC that we're using in the battery. So moving left one more time, this is our smart disconnect switch. So this is brand new for PWRcell 2. This is essentially your hub for your solar coming in from the roof, tying into your battery, and then possibly tying into a generator as well. We do support both Wi-Fi and cellular communications with this smart disconnect switch. One of the other really cool functionalities that we just rolled out is that we are also going to have the ability to be able to manage this PWRcell 2 system in an outage with a local area network. So even if cell towers are down and your internet service provider is down, I heard homeowners talking about this when Hurricane Helene hit, that, it took out cell service for days. The internet was down and they weren't able to monitor their battery system. So you will still be able to monitor your PWRcell 2 system and see what's going on with a local area network, which is a huge value add there. Moving on, we've talked about the Ecobee. I'll get into a few more screenshots of what this looks like for you. Once again, included with every system. One other thing I'll mention about the Ecobee quick is that even before going solar, if you haven't invested in a smart thermostat previously, The Ecobee can save you up to 26% on your heating and air conditioning costs, just by being a smarter way to manage your heating and cooling. There are a lot of cool functionalities that you can employ with this. I was just talking about with Gabe about this earlier. You can really roll out some cool things where you can get smart sensors, and different areas of the home will be running at different temperatures based on if they're occupied or not. And the other thing is, even if you're not one to necessarily program the Ecobee yourself, it's a smart device. It'll learn, when you're home from school, when you're home from work, etc. And it'll actually try to make smart choices just based on that, even if you're not interested in getting into the programming. So, that in and of itself is going to be a huge value add with the system that's going to help you save some additional money. And then finally, we have pictured here our flagship home standby generator. So you can see here the generator ties directly into this smart disconnect switch as well. So it's a very easy installation to be able to add this generator to a PWRcell 2 system, especially if that generator is already on site. All right. So monitoring, I did want to touch on. So once again, you have two different options when it comes to monitoring the PWRcell 2 system. You can either use your PowerView app, or you can monitor through the Ecobee Smart Thermostat. I think most people will end up using a combination of both. So once again, this is it's going to be wall mounted. It's going to take the place of your existing thermostat. It's a very easy installation. Most homeowners even install it themselves, but I'm sure Cape Fear would be happy to take care of that for you. So we will be pushing, once again, critical outage alerts. There's a really cool animated power flow where you can see, you can kind of see it in the top right version. So this is showing a home that's consuming 9.45 kW. The solar is producing 6.81 kW, and they're pulling 2.64 kW out of the battery. So the grid is showing 0, so the grid is out at this point, and this customer is in an outage. And then you can see down below, once the solar is no longer producing, that's when it's going to show you how many hours of backup you have left. Even when the power is not out, you're still able to see a lot of good information here. Bottom right shows you where you can dig in and see. This is showing a typical day, and how much of the homeowner's production went into the battery, went back to the grid, or was consumed in the home. All right, and then moving on to PowerView. So this is our homeowner app that you can get both in Android and in the Apple Store. So you have real-time monitoring for solar production, battery consumption, home consumption. There's a generator in this image as well that's not being used. So if you tie in a generator, you'll be able to monitor that in the PowerView app. Let's see, a couple things I wanted to touch on. We did make some significant improvements to this app recently to make it more user-friendly. Backup reserve capacity can easily be changed. If you're, expecting a power outage might come, you can set it to 100%, keep the battery 100% charged. If you're operating in more of a self-consumption mode, then you're going to want that to be in the 20 to 30% range. So you have a lot of battery capacity to be cycling on a daily basis, to avoid pulling kilowatt hours from the utility, especially during those time of use periods. You can select if you want to charge the battery from solar only or solar in the grid. Once again, solar in the grid might be something that you leverage if you're expecting a storm to come or something similar. And then grid export settings, and then there's some other changes that you can make in here as well. On the screenshot on the far right, you'll see that you're actually able to program your specific utility into PowerView. which will provide you real-time savings numbers based on your solar production, your home consumption, and the kilowatt hour rate through your utility. So definitely some cool kind of advanced functionality in PowerView, but for the basic, like I would say what Ecobee is showing you for the most part is essentially what you're seeing on the first page of PowerView on the far left, which is really just your snapshot of what's happening at that given moment with the system. All right. So, in closing here, I wanted to go over, what is I feel like there are a lot of value adds that PWRcell 2 provides. And I think that based on what you're looking for as a homeowner, PWRcell 2 could be a great fit for you, or it could be, the only fit for you. And I think what you want to look at here is, are you focused on resiliency and savings? Do you live in an area prone to outages? I always tell the story about when I was growing up, we went through Fran and we lost power for a week. I definitely had no generator, no home battery at that point. Being a kid, it was fun. We were just like hopping around to whoever had a pool, but I'm sure my parents were less thrilled to be out of power for a week. So these systems are really helping to alleviate that challenge that you're running into, being exposed to hurricanes on the North and South Carolina coast. But the other thing is this system, once again, we're tying it into a battery. It's helping you to save money on the rising electricity costs. As Gabe mentioned earlier, we're still waiting for the final bill to pass, but some of these subsidies could be going away. It's definitely a great time to be looking into getting one of these solar and storage systems now, especially with some of the rebates that Duke is providing if you happen to be in Duke territory. So moving on, HVAC management, we've talked about this, but I do want to say that I think that the way that we're incorporated with the Ecobee provides a best-in-class management of your HVAC unit. You're not going to get the visibility and the control into managing AC with our competitors that you're seeing with this Generac Ecobee integration. And once again, I think it kind of ties into the fifth point, not to skip ahead, but do you value visibility? Like, do you value being in the know about what's happening with your system and being able to make those choices and do a little tinkering? If so, I think you're going to get a lot of value out of this system. Do you want to back up more than the essentials and for longer than a few hours? So this is exactly why I recommend going with the 18 kilowatt hour Generac option, because I find that most people in an outage want to be able to back up, more than lights, fridge, and a few small appliances. If you have an electric range, if you have an electric hot water heater, if you're on a well, these are the things that you and your family want to have access to in an outage. And, having more capacity in the battery is only going to help with that. Being able to stack the solar output to the battery output is only going to help to be able to run a few of those loads for a little longer. Owning an electric vehicle. So I think that once again, the added capacity and the stacking of the solar output really helps you if you have an electric vehicle. Being able to charge that electric vehicle off of your solar in the middle of the day is going to be a big value add during an outage. Even if it's only for a few hours, it's definitely something that you're going to want to have access to in a long duration outage. And then finally, tying back into the visibility and service, one of the only things that we didn't really touch on is that the idea that with AC coupled systems, you're typically going to be pairing with a microinverter solution on the roof. And the microinverter, for those of you who aren't aware, you're having an individual inverter under each solar panel, or maybe one microinverter under 2 or 4 solar panels. But the benefit of the microinverter over the string inverter is the visibility for you, the homeowner, but also for Cape Fear from a monitoring perspective, from a service perspective, from an uptime perspective. There's no single point of failures with microinverters. So, a lot of added value there by being incorporated with a microinverter with this AC coupled system. All right, and I think that's the last slide, and I will pass it back to Gabe.
Cool. Thanks so much, Henry. Appreciate you getting into all the nitty-gritty details there on the product. I know that some of that can be in the weeds a little bit, but I think it's also what gets a lot of us excited when it comes to parsing out the difference between some of these products. And I think there's a number of ways, as you highlighted, that the PWRcell 2 product really stands out. Awesome. Well, for those of you who have worked with us in the past, I think, of course, we like to speak to our process and just what it looks like to learn a little bit more about this product and whether or not it could be a good fit for you. If you're interested in learning more and taking a look at a project for your own home, then we encourage you to either use the QR code here on the screen, or you can go to www.capefearsolarssystems.com to submit a request. And what that'll do is it'll prompt one of our project consultants to reach out and schedule a time with the project developer, who during a meeting with you will take an opportunity to look at your consumption, that is your electricity usage. They'll look at your roof structure if you don't already have solar, as well as your shading. And then they'll customize a system with you that's designed to meet your needs. And they'll use, a combination perhaps of some drone-based technology as well as some satellite imagery. If you decide that it is a good fit, and it's okay if ultimately it isn't, we just want to be a good resource for you, then after signing an agreement with us, we'd get started on the HOA application, which we handle along with all electrical and permitting applications. And of course, once installation comes, then we're looking at 2 to 3 days for an installation. We handle, of course, those inspections for the week to 2 weeks that follow. And of course, any utility documentation as well. The bottom line is we handle every step along the way. And then at the end of the day, you have a system that you can declare your energy independence for, right? You can produce the electricity that you're making and use it whenever you see fit, thanks to the ability to store that in the battery. So there you go. And on that note, we'll jump on to the end here. And I just want to say thank you again for everyone for joining today. We do have a couple of minutes here for some Q&A. Now, I know Henry and I spent the most of the time talking, but we do have one of our project developers, Dar Hupsch, who works with homeowners here in our Wilmington area, looking at new projects for solar and storage to see if they're a good fit, as well as Alex Reyes, our energy storage specialist. So if you're someone who already has a solar solution and curious about adding a potential storage solution, then he would be the person to speak to as well. I think we've got one question that has come in here, but before we even jump into that one, and I'll wait for a couple more to come in. Henry, I didn't prepare you for this, but the question that came to my mind as we were partway through our time today was, this is obviously a second generation product, the PWRcell 2. And so I'm just curious if you could share a little bit with our guests, what did Generac really learn in going from the Gen 1 to Gen 2, and why is that something that consumers should be so excited about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought this up. I probably should have touched on this a little bit more. I think, yeah, I mean, to me, I think the first thing that comes to mind is it's a significantly more powerful battery. So you're going to be able to back up your central AC units with this PWRcell 2 battery. PWRcell 1 was more limited in that capacity. It had a 50 amp limit. So a little bit more of kind of an essentials plus backup solution, where I think we're really getting into offering the managed whole home backup with PWRcell 2. And then, when we're talking about AC coupling, PWRcell 1 was a DC coupled solution. Although DC coupled solutions are more efficient, I think there are some, I touched on some of those other benefits of the AC coupled architecture. And I will say that after 5 years of being with the DC coupled architecture, I'm officially converted. I see so much value in AC coupling and microinverters and panel level optimization, both for you, the homeowner, and from a service perspective as well. And I guess I'll also say that, PWRcell 2 has been re-engineered from the ground up. I know that honestly, the only thing that's really similar about the two batteries is the capacity. So we kept the same size battery modules, and going from 9 to 18 kilowatt hours, but we're able to get significantly more power out of the same capacity battery. And a lot of work has gone into this battery over the last few years, and I would, go a step further to say that, PWRcell 1 was a battery that was very closely based on a Pica technology, which was a company that Generac acquired in 2019. And to me, this is the first like fully engineered by Generac battery to hit the market, and I'm really excited about it. And I've been really excited to hear all the good initial feedback we've gotten from Cape Fear and other dealers that I work with in the eastern part of the country.
Cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I think that's a helpful background in terms of the journey that Generac's been on, and we've been excited as well. I think going kind of back to the drawing board in terms of engineering it from the ground up. I mean, we had a lot of success with the first generation product, but I think that's always a good strategy to take when it just comes to making sure that the product is engineered from the ground up, and accomplishes all that it sets out to do. Dar, a quick question for you. I know, of course, with the Power Pair incentive program, there really aren't conversations that we're having with new potential homeowners and within our community that don't include storage as part of that conversation. I'm curious. I know the generator integration portion can be really attractive for people. For someone who already has a generator at their home, what might you say about why they might want to consider adding storage as a part of a solar project anyways?
Yeah, Gabe, I appreciate the question. It has been fantastic to see how PowerPair has made these systems so much more financially accessible to people in our community over the past year or two. With generator integration, solar and storage, it's really about redundancy. It's about having a backup to the backup and not putting all of your eggs into one basket. And for the people that I've worked with who've decided to implement a system like that already, I think it's just about the peace of mind of knowing that, if there is an extended period of bad weather, they're not relying purely on solar. They've got their generator standing behind them, but they're also not going to be relying on that fuel source 24/7. And especially where I think where it's been especially exciting is some of the projects we work on where, it might be a waterfront home and it's not really realistic for them to have a propane supply that would last 5 or 10 days. So being able to have that generator run for 2 or 3 hours instead of 24 hours to supply energy in an outage, I mean, that's pretty powerful. So really just a few of the impacts that we see, but I think that I can't see a scenario where that kind of solution doesn't just become more and more popular.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. I think that's really interesting to hear, obviously being in a region where the storms are a norm. It's not something we're preparing for because we're unsure if it might happen. They're a reality of our every season here. So Alex, I've got a question for you as well. Knowing that we have so many customers in our community that have installed solar in the past, when they're exploring adding storage into their home, what are just some of the biggest questions that they have?
I would say the most common questions that I do receive are typically like kind of gathered towards how the system ultimately works with the battery. Obviously how the solar production compares to how the battery's going to get charged. That's a very common question that I get. I think one here listed is obviously the lifespan of the battery. How long am I going to have power for during an outage? Warranties, things of that nature.
Perfect. Yeah, appreciate that. And I think, of course, that's a step in our process that we can kind of dive into as we understand a little bit more about homeowner loads, what their usage looks like, of course, what they're hoping to back up, and from that, how long they can expect to back those things up for. To that point, we've got a question here from a guest. What is the expected life of a battery within a system? Henry, I don't know that we touched on the warranty too much. Do you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, our Generac PWRcell 2 system is going to come with a 10-year warranty. And so what I would say there is like the expected life, we're not going to warranty something and expect it to, die at 10 years day one. I think a healthy estimate is if you're going to be investing in a solar system that's likely comes with a 25-year warranty. If you think about your battery being replaced one time during the life of that solar system, I think that's a realistic estimate, around 12 and a half years. Also keep in mind that the cost of batteries is continuing to come down. So when it comes time for the replacement of that battery in the middle of the life of your solar panels, you're going to be getting a battery that's more advanced, likely for less money.
Agreed. Agreed. I think, yeah, it's always funny to think about, what it might look like to replace these products, 15 years from now. I think these are extremely advanced for where we are currently, and obviously they're solving some very real problems in terms of backup and outage needs. So it's important that we have those solutions and have these available. And I think, we're ahead of the curve for where we could be, but solutions 15 years from now, I don't expect you're going to be too worried about replacing one cell in the cabinet. So cool. Obviously, we've got some other questions here, primarily pertaining to cost. I think, ultimately there are, varying levels of this storage solution, right? And every solution is going to look differently depending on a home's electrical system, what their configuration is in terms of how much solar they have paired with it, the incentives that are available to them in their area, federal tax credit, and potentially otherwise. So ultimately, I'd have to encourage you to speak to, Alex or Dar. If you're new to solar, Dar is going to be the right person for you. If you've got a solar system and curious about adding storage, and Alex can certainly help. They're going to be able to provide, those preliminary expectations in terms of what an investment could look like, but also answer some of your more intentional questions after understanding a little bit more about your usage patterns and your goals from a backup perspective. And of course, make sure that it's clear, ultimately what savings you can realize as well, whether it be on time of use or due to, again, some incentives that might still be available. All right. So any other questions before we close things out here? I'll give it another second, but while we wait, I just want to again say thank you, Henry, for taking the time to join with us today. It was awesome to learn a little bit more about the product. I know our community is really appreciative of the partnership with Generac, and really, really excited about making sure that this is an option for our homeowners in our region.
Great. Well, thanks again, Gabe. I really appreciate the partnership and excited to be able to come on here and talk more to your customer base about PWRcell 2 and about how it might be a good fit for them. So I do encourage you to, if you're interested, talk to Dar, talk to Alex. They're really great at what they do. And don't take it for granted. There are a lot of people that are talking about solar out there that are way less educated on it than Dar and Alex. So you've come to the right place, and I'll leave it there.
Cool.
Well,
Thanks, Henry. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. We do have a quick exit survey as you leave. If you don't mind completing that, we'd love to hear about other topics you would like to hear about in the future. Otherwise, I hope everyone has a wonderful 4th of July and has a good rest of their week. Thanks.